Hello and happy lunch hour for those of you in the Eastern time zone. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join Beyond the CMS, our rebranded version of our web tech talk show, but we're keeping all of the fundamentals the same. Just before I get into it, just a shout out to everyone who is joining on all the different channels. I think we're broadcasting on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So hey, this whole idea started by me kind of sharing the joy I had listening to the Car Guys, which is a kind of a call-in talk show, and people will wonder about what's wrong with their car, and you'd have a couple of guys there just giving their insights on how to get things fixed. And we wanted to create an opportunity for anyone to ask us anything. We do have a little bit of a bias around web technologies and CMSs, and of course, AI is impacting our lives everywhere we look. So that's a hot topic. So thanks for joining. Today, super special guest, Barry Darcy from Storyblok is joining us today to share what's going on with composable content and AI and all kinds of cool stuff. So checking in from Dublin, Barry, thanks for joining us today. Do you want to just introduce folks into what you're up to?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. First of all, Chris, I'm very excited to join you today, and welcome to all of the visitors. I'm not on the East Coast lunchtime, as you mentioned. I'm in Dublin, in Ireland, so it's a little bit later in my day, towards the end of the day, but very happy to join. So yeah, maybe just quick introduction to me. Hoping many of the viewers today are familiar with Storyblok. Storyblok is a headless CMS. We were founded in 2017 out of a small place in Austria called Linz. Our two co-founders, Dominic and Alex, they're both actually still with us as CEO and CTO. So we've been around for quite a while. I guess most of your viewers are familiar with what a headless CMS is, but maybe we can go into that a little bit later and just give a quick overview of exactly what we mean by that. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about the exciting stuff that we're doing over here at Storyblok as we go through the different questions maybe that the audience might have today. Awesome. But yeah, no, super happy to join.
Great, and good segue and to encourage anyone who's listening in live. Really, ask us anything you want. We have a great production team. Marie and Natalie are manning the system behind the scenes and are helping take questions and put them into a channel here. But I thought we might just get started out picking up on what you were mentioning. And just by the way, Storyblok is a content platform. It's typically called headless or composable. And Barry, maybe I'll turn it over to you to maybe just describe kind of in layman's terms what that means and how it compares to kind of the old school way of producing web content.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Chris. And that's definitely a topic that's good for me. So ultimately, people are familiar with CMS. I imagine all of the viewers here know what a content management system is, where you put your content that you're generally sending to your digital asset. In most cases, that's a website, okay? But a headless CMS is a slightly different content management system where the back end, where your content is stored, those fields where you input your content, it's separated from the front end and how it's displayed, okay? So instead of being tied to just one delivery, one website layout, it's delivered through APIs to many different devices, platforms, or different types of content delivery. Traditionally, that would be a website. It could be an application, a digital display, an Apple Watch, but ultimately omni-channel delivery to any sort of asset. And what that does is it gives developers full flexibility, and it also gives marketers or content editors that scalability and the speed that they need to pivot into new markets or to add new technology. So in a nutshell, that's how we like to explain headless CMS over here at Storyblok.
You mentioned giving developers flexibility, and I'm kind of stoked because we're just about to launch a really cool new website on Storyblok, and I'll show a quick demo of that. But something that we promote when we're introducing a customer to headless or composable technologies is the opportunity in the future to not have a reliance on a suite of developer capabilities. They really only need to focus on the front end. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that kind of frees up an organization in the future to resource the ongoing management of sites?
Yeah, like a really important topic. Like, so I lead the partner effort here at Storyblok. So a really important topic for me is how we can drive efficiencies for agencies that are using Storyblok to deliver for their customers. And of course, that heavily overlaps into enabling developers to have the tools they need to be able to go quickly, right? And the flexibility that an API-led, a headless CMS offers is that you're ultimately front-end agnostic, right? You're not tied into any particular mode of development, any particular coding language. You have full flexibility as a developer to use whatever front-end framework that you see fit, right? Generally speaking, with headless CMS, we're seeing more edge front-end frameworks, more modern front-end frameworks than you might be familiar with in using an older monolithic system like a WordPress or an Adobe Experience Manager. It allows you to connect to any front-end technology you need with ease, right? Being API-led driven. So giving the developer that flexibility to do that, of course, drives a ton of efficiency. But then it also comes back to organizations or agencies that are trying to recruit developers that fit the model of creating these assets that we're all working on together. You're able to find people with a more diverse skill set, right? Someone that understands JavaScript well and can deliver into whatever front-end framework that particular organization needs. Having that flexibility is really important when it comes to content delivery, and we like to deliver that here at Storyblok.
Awesome. You mentioned a term that some folks are also a little bit unfamiliar with in this, I guess, more modern paradigm shift. You mentioned edge networks and publishing on an edge. What does that mean?
Yeah, so ultimately you're given the flexibility to host your website in many different ways. You know, with a lot of the old monolithic systems, you might be tied into a select few hosting options, and a lot of more traditional industries would often go for actually on-premise hosting, right, for security reasons or for different reasons coupled together. But ultimately, you can deliver Storyblok through more modern edge hosting solutions like a Netlify or a Vercel, which it gives you a very flexible and instantaneous way to deploy your digital asset across those omni channels that I mentioned earlier. So you're ultimately able to, like I mentioned earlier, you can be front end agnostic. You can also be somewhat agnostic when it comes to the server side rendering and to the requirements you might have to deploy into multiple locales or to multiple device types or applications, websites, watches, digital displays, whatever that might be. So having speed there and a little bit of kind of agility to choose modern technologies coupled with modern CMS, I think is a real benefit to drill in on too.
Yeah, something we really love about the whole stack architecture is that the end product is essentially a flat HTML file. There's nothing to hack into. It's kind of published all that information, flattened it out. It presents quickly, in different devices, and there's a lot of security benefits as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got to mention AI, of course. I know your whole team is rapidly deploying lots of new features and functions within the platform itself. Would it be cool to ask you to talk a little bit more about what folks can expect from Storyblok?
Yeah. AI, hot topic, right? I think everybody's ears perk up a little bit when we mention those two letters together. And for sure, it's very important to our roadmap here at Storyblok as well. I would say right now we're sprinkling some AI into some of the features that we already had, and we're focusing on AI when it comes to some of our collaboration features. In January, we launched a new feature called the Ideation Room. There's some AI in there. People who are familiar with using content management, they're definitely familiar with this cumbersome task of having to first put your content somewhere, wherever that may be. Generally speaking, it's in a Word doc or a Google doc, and then you're trying to figure out how to migrate it into your CMS fields, and that can be a very clunky exercise. But we've developed an in-app feature within Storyblok where you can have that kind of more kind of free content editing experience contained within the application itself. And within there, we've sprinkled in a little bit of AI. So you're able to change the tone, everything you'll be familiar with using a ChatGPT or an OpenAI feature, or many of the other products out there are sprinkled now into Storyblok. So when you're writing that content, you can have the freedom in app to really use that AI power to just deliver a more succinct and more impactful message through your content. You can then take that content quickly in app and transfer it into the right components of your website, right? So you're getting that kind of speed that comes with the AI in your editing experience, and then you're not having to leave the application to kind of bring content from one place to the next. Another interesting use case that we have for AI, language translation is a very important part of content management. My own background is actually on the agency side, and I guess 10 plus years ago, I remember these really tricky projects, even if you're looking at 4 or 5 different languages. I remember one project in particular, I won't name the particular company, but we were working in 5, 6 languages. We were working with translators in all of these different countries, right? And then you're trying to keep all of that content in sync. You're trying to make sure that the tone is still the same. But with Storyblok now, you can use AI to handle all of those translations. And of course, with AI, right, it's still early days somewhat, right? There's so much power there, but there still is a world where we still live in a world, I believe, where we have to have good governance over that content that's being created through AI. And for that, we have a lot of workflow features also contained within Storyblok. So we're not just creating that content and shipping it straight away, publishing it. We're able to put that into workflows where it needs to be approved, it needs to be reviewed, but ultimately we're getting to that point a lot quicker. So that's just a couple of the things we've sprinkled a little bit of AI on in Storyblok, but plenty more to come in our roadmap for 2025 and beyond.
You mentioned your agency background, and I think it's important just to highlight how Storyblok allows agencies to be more efficient. One of our challenges in a migration of a large site with tens of thousands of pages is our ability to use AI to restructure meta and schema data, for example, and import that. Do you want to talk a little bit about the, I guess, features and benefits that Storyblok has for agencies and managing their efficiencies?
Yeah, I could talk for hours about the benefits for partners, right? That's literally my day job. But let's highlight a few things. But again, thinking back to my agency days and CMS in general, right? Back in my agency days, we used to use a more clunky system when I started back a long time ago. And what I remember as a real pain point was the handover of a website to the customer. I remember working on these kind of brochure-sized instruction guides about how you can update and edit your website. With Storyblok, this kind of enablement of the customer is super fast, right? So you can very quickly show them how to use the product, and they'll be able to kind of pick it up quickly by themselves. We don't need those big manuals about how to work your website anymore. So that makes things super easy for the content editor, for the marketing people to be able to go fast. But the efficiencies that come from the agency side, we've mentioned a few earlier, right? And being able to hire developers with a multifaceted skill set and still be able to deliver. But the efficiency really comes in handover, making your customer more self-sufficient in how they manage their website. I'd say that's one of the main gains that we're getting agency side. At Storyblok, we want to enable our partners, agency implementation partners globally, to understand all of the feature set well and understand how they can deliver the best products for their customers. So that's a huge focus for me and for my team, but tons of efficiencies that we can gain there together.
Super cool. I just, 1 second here. We've got a question from Natalie. She says, happy Thursday. She works mostly with SMBs. And she asks, does a headless CMS make sense for that audience, or best kept at the enterprise level, or does this serve everyone? Maybe talk a little bit more about your product and how you serve both or all markets.
Yeah, no, really, we do serve all markets. We are an enterprise grade CMS at our core, right? And we focus a lot on security and compliance and making sure we're fully accredited for large enterprises and that we have a fully scalable feature set for them. When it comes to going into new markets, languages, locales, being able to do that quickly, that's where we really are a focused enterprise-ready product. But of course, there's an entry point for all, right? We do operate across all business sizes. We have a number of different price points and different plans that we offer to the market that really fit every business type, right from the local business to the SMB, right up to enterprise, right? But I think everybody needs to have a digital presence, as we know, and I guess everyone who's listening today knows that quite well. But there really is a fit for everybody. Within our pricing model, we have a focus on our community, our developers, so they can really kind of try it out, check it out, figure out how to use Storyblok and how it could potentially be valuable within their organization or agency. But we do focus quite a bit on having our product enterprise ready. So while it does fit for everybody, enterprise grade features are really where we're focused in terms of our future development plans.
Awesome. You touched on it lightly, but if you don't mind expanding a little bit, some of the questions our customers have, they're kind of medium enterprise, is what are your security compliance levels? How do you manage data in different countries? Can you talk a little bit in more detail about security?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're fully ISO accredited and we're very proud of that. We have a full team of security experts here at Storyblok and we're keeping up to date with all of the latest security and compliance topics that we need to. So that's a really important part of what we need to do to stay enterprise ready, right? So that's one of the things that we focus on. When it comes to server location is often a very hot topic for enterprises too. So we have a number of server locations around the world. We have a server even in mainland China behind the Great Firewall. We have servers all the way in Australia. We obviously have US, Canadian servers. In Europe, we're generally hosted out of Frankfurt. But for enterprise customers, we do offer that flexibility to host your content wherever you need to for compliance reasons. Connected to that, a lot of enterprises require a very strict uptime SLA. So we're able to offer that too on our enterprise plans. Now, let's be clear, as you mentioned earlier, this type of technology is ultimately throwing out HTML front-end code, right? Which is super secure, almost unhackable, as you say, okay? But there's other things there that are important too, right? And there's additional features. You can find everything on our website. I'm sure we'll share a little bit of a takeaway too about our compliance. There's some other cool features there that enterprise orgs like to use, such as single sign-on to make sure things are super secure. But at the same time, we do offer two-factor authentication for our SMB customers too. So security is important, not just for enterprise, but we really focus on those detailed requirements for our enterprise customers.
Awesome. Just touching on, and maybe it's a good time for me to remind everyone now, we're pretty unscripted around here. And also, if you are listening in, thank you again for making some time in your day, and really feel free to ask us anything. I wanted to just bring up a topic that is the one challenge we have with headless or composable. As an agency, we're expected to give the client a pretty clear sense on the overall budget of a project. And composable technically means that you're able to compose a variety of different services into your website. Let's say that service could be search or a PIM or some other little bit of technology that's all incorporated. What are your thoughts on how to get around the agency challenge of giving the customer a total cost of what the site is, and maybe touch on how we as an agency can work with Storyblok in understanding kind of a consumption model? What is the road to getting to the right level for them to choose which level of your product they need?
Yeah, like really, really good question. And I guess the true answer is it's really on a case by case basis, right? We really need to understand what is the requirement of that customer and find the right home for them in terms of our packages and what we can offer from our product. But of course, total cost of ownership is a really, really hot topic, right? And it's something that we see as super important in how we position ourselves to our customers and also through agencies. And we try to be extremely predictable in how we present our pricing, how we present our plans. So the businesses, they don't just see a price for the first year, they see a price that they're going to scale with, right? We give a number of different packages. We have a couple of enterprise options that are really tailored, based on the requirements, how many locales, other consumption-based features. But it's only just the consumption features that would actually elevate the price. And everything is super clear from the get-go in terms of what that would cost. So ultimately, the only unpredictable element to a scaling cost with our CMS is if you have a higher volume of users, you need to go into more locales, or if you have a higher demand, which is ultimately a success of the digital asset, right? It's performing well if you're getting high demand on it. But when it comes to total cost of ownership, and back to the start of your question, when we talk about this composable world, in the past with a monolithic system, you're kind of trying to squeeze everything into that product and trying to make everything work through one platform. Composable technologies, or best in breed, as we like to talk about, allows you to choose the best technologies to fit your needs, right? You're not just trying to shoehorn it into one product that you paid a massive budget for. You're able to spread that budget across the correct technologies that make sense for you. And we have a large technology ecosystem. We have around 40 integrations with other API-led technologies, other edge hosting platforms we talked about earlier, like Netlify or Vercel. But also, if you think about an e-commerce store that needs to have a complicated search function, we'd very often connect with a commerce tools, a BigCommerce, a Shopify, and couple that maybe with an enhanced search tool like Algolia. And you're marrying those technologies together. And we work with those technology partners to be able to present a more kind of combined price into the market. And we often are able to kind of refer our customers over to those other technologies to avail also of discounts, right, through our partnership. So when we couple those technologies, we're able to, again, try and deliver some predictability into what that cost will look like from the get-go and how it will scale with the success of the platform. But ultimately, TCO is a hot topic. Stay tuned. We're also doing some work with our analysts this year on what that looks like. We did a large study last year into return on investment with Storyblok, and we had some really good results, and you can check that out on our website. And just how quick you can go, right? There's a huge cost saving there on its own, right? But yeah, coupling that with the total cost of ownership, not just return on investment for the product of Storyblok, but everything else that encompasses your project. It's a real key to telling the customer or making the customer feel secure with that choice, right? Because it can be more choices to be made than with a traditional system, but you're ultimately getting a more bespoke technology stack that really meets your needs, right? And that can be super powerful. And the beauty of that, as I like to say too, is that because composable technologies in some ways are kind of plug in, plug out. In the example I mentioned earlier, if you wanted to take out search and add a PIM, for example, if you wanted to grow your stack in that way, you're kind of holding the technology vendors accountable to have a good product, right? Because you're not tied into these kind of big bulk, long-term contracts like you may have been with an older system. You're able to kind of have the flexibility to hold that vendor accountable to deliver what they said they would in the beginning of the deal or the beginning of your customer journey. And yeah, that's what we try to stay focused on, to make sure we're really delivering value to our customers at the early stages and, more importantly, as they scale.
Yeah, and I think so what that kind of means, or another way of saying it, is the beauty of headless. It allows you to kind of plug in different systems, and as your organization matures and has greater demands for different systems, you can swap them out. And that makes that, I think the flexibility is a greater advantage than the kind of small investment in time in figuring out the total cost of ownership. With Storyblok, can you start on a small plan and kind of just migrate up, or is that a whole, how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, we've a number of different models, right down to the developer community, where we want to encourage them to be able to play around with Storyblok. But as I mentioned, our focus is on delivering value to enterprises, larger mid-sized business up to enterprise. But yes, absolutely, there's a starting point even at enterprise to start with a smaller space requirement. That's what we call projects at Storyblok. And depending on how many users you have, like we very often we've got some really good success stories where we've kind of had this land and grow model where we've gone in, we've maybe worked on an internal project or a smaller project. And then the beauty of it is, and again, holding yourself accountable to the quality of your product, right? When users start to engage with these modern technologies like Storyblok, they find it hard to go back to the older systems, right? So they'll tend to advocate to use it across more projects. So absolutely, we've seen many customers come in, play around with things, and then expand onto bigger requirements that require more of an enterprise feature set. And that's when you can come in and maybe you don't have a full requirement on enterprise, but you may scale towards that in time. But there really is a home for everybody. And I'd encourage the listeners to check out our pricing and package page on the storyblok.com website. Plenty of information about tons of features that we offer to everybody at different levels.
Wonderful. And at the conclusion of this, we'll get your contact information in the comments area, of course, too.
Sounds good.
Time flies exceptionally fast having these chats, and there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to ask you about. I wanted to touch at least on two more topics. Can you talk a little bit about any of the customers you serve or the industries that you excel at? I'm just thinking if folks are listening in now or later in the artifacts of our podcast here. Do you want to talk a little bit about some key customers?
Yeah, I think a really interesting one, right? A really interesting customer segment for us in general is retail. And one of our customers that we're super proud of, and one that I really like to talk about because it's very much triangulated through our partner channel here at Storyblok, is the National Retail Federation, or NRF. Maybe some of the listeners or people tuning in later will be familiar with NRF. They're basically the world's largest retail trade association. And they came to one of our agency partners, RDA, based out of Baltimore, and they had a very big challenge, right? NRF every year has a huge event called the Big Show, which was hosted in Manhattan this year. I was actually there. It was a great event. Cool. 50,000 industry professionals. They come together to network, to learn from each other about innovation and retail. And NRF actually became our customer. So we were already attending NRF, and it was really nice then to go back this year and talk about them as a customer. But they came with a number of different challenges, a number of different requirements. They had an extremely tight timeline that was obviously tied to the event launch. They had a lot of stakeholders that needed to contribute with content. So having the flexibility within Storyblok to have those workflows, to have approval flows, was an important requirement to them too. They had a high traffic requirement, right? So again, coming into that more modern hosting technology stack was an important requirement for them too. And together with RDA, we talked about why Storyblok, and we told them all of the really cool stuff about how you can be on this headless architecture, how you can be API first, and the ease of use that comes for the content teams. And then a really important aspect for them when we started to demo, maybe they were evaluating some other CMS platforms, was the visual editor capabilities that we have in Storyblok. And that was a real game changer for them. It allowed NRF and their marketing team to be able to update their content directly, to preview it in real time. And this ultimately helped them with their requirement on that extremely tight deadline to get all of the content approved and executed quickly. So RDA, our technology partner, our implementation partner, they worked on it. They built out the project in record time. They cut the timeline on the previous project by half, all of these nice news stories. Their dev team was able to be focused, like we mentioned earlier, on that front end experience. And then the marketing team were able to focus on the content at the same time, right? So giving again to that requirement of going fast. And a couple of key results to mention from that particular case study is that they were able to, I've already touched on, 2x faster go live. Mm-hmm. They had a 40% reduction in their ongoing development costs from their previous platform. They obviously improved a lot on marketing team efficiency. They had less delays. They had these approval workflows so they could get their content out quicker and they could be more agile with that. And yeah, we actually have a really nice quote from the NRF team, which was, the content editing experience was intuitive and allowed the team to move quickly. And again, speed, agility, these are all of the things we like to focus on here at Storyblok. And we really feel this particular project I'm talking about, it showcases just how well a well orchestrated partnership between a forward-thinking agency partner And bringing the right CMS technology like a Storyblok can deliver those enterprise results, but not just deliver them quickly and give them the results that they need. So really nice news story there. And we're working with a wide array of partners, including yourselves, at delivering these exceptionally quick projects to many customers across the US at the moment. So that's just one of many to highlight today in a quick update.
You're awesome. I'm going to ask for just a little bit more of your time than we expected.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. You can keep going.
Wonderful. We've got a question here from Janice. And she says, a question that comes up with clients often as they explore the CMS world: how does Storyblok differentiate themselves from the other players in the market? You have lots of great features, but what would you say is your secret sauce and compelling benefit?
Yeah, great question, right? And I think, look, we touched on a lot of the benefits today in general around headless CMS, right? And headless CMS in general is a great technology choice. But I want to kind of catch on two things that I think set us apart here at Storyblok. I've talked about them briefly already, but the most important thing that we see, particularly through the deals we're working on with our agency partners, is that predictability in pricing, right? When you as a decision maker are making a decision to take on a new technology stack, it's sometimes easier to do nothing, or it's easier to maybe stick with the incumbent, right? We want to make you feel secure in the choice that you're making, right? And that's why predictability and proving the return on investment to you when we're talking to you or discussing to you why Storyblok could be a fit is a real key. And I think that sets us apart, right? There's no hidden costs. We will tell you upfront, these are the things we believe you need. We want to create value for you with these features, of course. And like the question mentions, lots of great features for sure. But we want to make sure that they fit your needs. You understand what they will cost, and you'll understand, more importantly, how they will scale, right? And delivering that predictability to the decision maker is a real key to what we try to achieve here at Storyblok. But on the product side, right, and maybe a slightly more exciting answer connected to the feature set is that we were first to market with this visual editing capability, right? So what I mean by that is being able to see your content in line, in real time, and not having to kind of, okay, I'm looking at a large form on a page. I know I've learned how to use the CMS. I can understand which fields I'm populating, but then you're kind of triggering that to a staging environment. You're previewing it. You have to go back. You're trying to find the right field. Being able to preview everything and work with everything in real time, side by side, content fields, visual representation on the left-hand side, that's super powerful, right? And there are other products out there that have some similar features, but we really have pioneered this, right? And we've been ahead of the game in terms of adding to that and making that a really robust feature. To add to that product side, I would say Storyblok as a collaborative product. So if you think about how we collaborate in a Google document, adding a comment, adding a note for somebody to check in on, we bring all of those features into Storyblok too, right? So you're not working in silos.
Right.
A lot of us are working remote now, right? And you may need to write a blog and get it approved by your manager. All of this can happen in Storyblok. I touched on the ideation room too, but just really taking that full encompassing content editing experience into one application rather than having to use many, right? That's another key differentiator, I would say, with Storyblok.
Awesome. And for those people who are waiting to go get their lunch, maybe these will be great things to share later. But I just wanted to talk about kind of the future of agencies. And over here at Dotfusion, we've made a commitment to be agentic first. And even in our preliminary kind of modeling and beta projects, we're able to create websites from 2 or 3 chat prompts to go analyze some Figma files, write some content. We have folks overlooking things that are in senior posts and are well tenured. Other opportunities for us to create agents that might be able to speak directly to Storyblok and kind of create the models for us. And I know this may be putting you on the spot a little bit, but these are things that we're thinking about for the future. And I know just fundamentally being API first, it is a great position to be in. Any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, there's lots going on, I can tell you, in our roadmap around that agentic approach and ultimately being able to talk to Storyblok through the API and ask it to do certain things. We're working on a lot of exciting stuff. Like we want to live in a world where you can take a design of a website and pull it into Storyblok with a build ready, field structure ready, content schema ready to rock. That's the end goal. I can't really reveal a ton about our roadmap right now. It's a couple, but do stay tuned, right? And we will share the link to our roadmap so everybody who's watching can keep an eye on that. But that approach is definitely the track that we're taking, right? Being able to use the power of AI connected to an API can allow us to do many things, right? With great power comes great responsibility, as the old saying goes, right? And we don't see AI or generating like that exciting approach that I mentioned earlier, a command that generates a website. We see it more like a command that calls a structure of components together
Mm.
to formulate a web page or to create a draft of a blog on a particular topic that can be reviewed by a real person, by an expert later, right? I think that's the phase that we're at right now, and that's the type of feature set we'll be delivering in 2025. But look, we all know it. We're moving very close to a world where things can be generated instantaneously. But I think there's still plenty of room for the experts to verify that content. In the same, like, similar to the example I talked about earlier with translations, right?
Yeah.
There's still a place for manual review. But there's a lot we can do to speed up the process to make that content editing experience be even more efficient for marketers globally.
Awesome. And maybe just a last concept that I want to give you the opportunity to share for folks that are listening in now or later that are partner agencies or prospective partner agencies. What is the process? And maybe tell me a little bit more about how you serve partners. And I think that's a whole paradigm in and of itself, so to speak.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and yeah, maybe we might need to do a separate episode on that. But the high level is, we look. I come from an agency, and I lead the partner team here at Storyblok. Our two founders have come from an agency as well. Agencies, implementation agencies, they're in the DNA of Storyblok. We want to enable agencies to use Storyblok to deliver value for their customers. And for that, we've got a very mature partner program of which we have over 3,000 registered implementation partners globally using Storyblok. We have a separate contained product within the app called the Partner Portal, where there's lots of education resources, learning paths you can take on getting yourself up to speed on how to use Storyblok and succeed with implementation, how to understand our pricing and position it correctly to your customers, and many other connected things. But we give a ton of benefits. We also have a lot of in-house partner managers who are supporting our partner network globally to help them in anything they need connected to Storyblok. We have solution engineers that can deliver enablement on a kind of case-by-case basis connected to particular projects. But ultimately, because agencies are, like I mentioned, a part of our DNA here at Storyblok, we've invested into quite a large team here. We're 22 or 23 folks in the partner team that are supporting that partner network globally to execute successfully. Because ultimately, if agencies are delivering Storyblok at scale to their customers and doing it correctly and giving them the value of the feature set that we want them to, everybody's happy. Storyblok's happy with a happy customer. The customer's happy if they're happy, of course. And implementation partners using a great product and driving some of those efficiencies that we talked about earlier will also be super important.
Well, that is an amazing way to wrap up this episode with you. You gave me some ideas. I'd love to have you back for kind of a demo days where we can kind of even present that beautiful interface that you have for authors, which wind up being a big cohort of the decision makers on these projects. And we go out of our way to use your sandbox environment, get people in there kind of editing something like this is what your day-to-day life is going to be like in the platform. So stay tuned for that. And I think we'll wrap it up here today with a little desire for more.
Yeah, sounds good. Same on my side. I'd love to be back. I'd love to tell you more about any other connected topic, dig a little bit deeper into some of the things we talked about today. but also even to talk about the partner program and the different
Wonderful.
benefits that we can offer there. But like you said, there will be takeaways in the comments. I'll make sure I share a list to cover some of the topics we mentioned today, the NRF case study, the partner program, and some of the key features along with our roadmap. So everybody that's tuning in can keep abreast of where we're headed with all of these new and exciting AI features and non-AI features, but lots of cool AI stuff too to keep everybody interested.
That's really wonderful and a great example of our partnership and your willingness to come and get put on the spot a little bit. I really appreciate it, and you've added a lot to the show. And for everyone who's stayed a little longer than normal, thank you very much for making time in your day to sit down with us and listen to some exciting stuff from Storyblok. So really appreciate it, and thanks for tuning in. Probably your dinner time in Dublin.
Coming close, a little bit more to do, but thanks for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it.
You got it. Okay, everyone. Have a wonderful day out there. We're going to sign off.
Bye now.